Picture this. It's 3 in the morning, ship's time. You're 300 feet below the surface of the North Atlantic. Around you, a steel tube almost 400 feet long, wrapped in tens of thousands of anechoic tiles, moving through absolute black water at patrol speed. The lights in the passageway are red. The only sound is the low, constant hum of the ventilation and the occasional soft tick of a valve. In a bunk, barely wider than his shoulders, curtain drawn, coffin locker packed neatly underneath, a sailor is fast asleep. Most people, if they had to spend a single night down there, would honestly not close their eyes for a second. So how does an entire crew on a boat that runs 24 hours a day, sealed off from sunlight for weeks or months at a stretch, actually get real restful sleep down there? That is exactly what we are going to find out today. Hi, I'm Jack, and this is Life at Sea, the channel where we go inside the lives of the people who live and work on the water. The submariners we are talking about today are the men and women serving in modern nuclear attack and ballistic missile boats. That's the Virginia and Ohio class boats in the United States Navy, the Astute and Vanguard class boats in Britain's Royal Navy, and the Collins class boats in the Royal Australian Navy. Crews who slip beneath the surface, disappear from the world for weeks or months, and do not come back up until the mission is done. Submariners sleep on a boat like that is one of the strangest and most engineered problems in modern seafaring. What sleep actually looks like down there, because the base rate difficulty is genuinely brutal. For weeks at a stretch, sometimes months, you do not see sunlight, not once. The boat submerges out of Groton or Faslane or the naval base at Stirling, and from that moment until surfacing at the end of patrol, the outside world for you is a set of gauges and a lighting scheme. Every breath you take has been through a scrubber. Every drop of water you drink has been distilled on board. The air is chemically breathable, kept in balance by monoethanolamine scrubbers pulling carbon dioxide out of the boat, electrolytic cells cracking seawater into oxygen, catalytic burners eating up hydrogen and carbon monoxide. It works. But subtly, it is not the same air you breathe on a beach. Long-term studies of submarine atmospheres consistently find elevated levels of carbon dioxide, volatile organic compounds, and fine particulates, all of which take a small toll on how the body rests. The temperature runs cool everywhere. Most sailors sleep under a wool blanket even in summer, because the boat is cold enough to notice. Modern nuclear boats are the quietest man-made objects ever put in the ocean. The Astute alone carries more than 39,000 anechoic tiles. But quiet is not silent. There is always a low machinery hum, the whisper of ventilation, the tick of valves, the occasional muffled tannoy. Above your head, someone is working. Below your feet, someone is working. Every square inch of the boat is running 24 hours a day. Then there is the clock problem. Your body wants a 24-hour day. Sunrise, sunset, meals at roughly the same time, sleep at roughly the same time. On a submarine, there is no sunrise. There has never been a sunrise. The lighting is the same at what the boat calls noon and what the boat calls midnight, because in any real sense, the boat does not have a noon or a midnight. It has a watch bill, and here is something a lot of people do not realize. Even after the United States Submarine Force made major reforms to how crews sleep, the underlying data is still hard. A 2021 Naval Submarine Medical Research Laboratory study of a fast attack crew on the current schedule found that 77.8% of the crew still reported poor sleep quality, more than half reported high daytime sleepiness, and over a quarter showed insomnia symptoms severe enough that any doctor topside would call it clinical. That is what a submariner is up against every single night. No natural light, recirculated air, a cold, humming, never-quiet steel tube, a body clock with nothing to grip, and yet, somehow, they sleep. And the answer is not one thing. It is layers. The rack itself and the coffin locker underneath it. The bunk on a United States submarine is not called a bunk. It is called a rack. On a Virginia-class attack boat or on one of the big Ohio-class boomers, the racks are stacked 3 high, held up by metal frames and chains. Each one is roughly 72 inches long, 30 inches wide, with about 18 inches of headroom between your mattress and the underside of the rack above. You can roll over. You cannot sit up. Getting into a middle or bottom rack is a careful sideways slide. Each rack has its own reading lamp, its own small ventilation duct with a control you can open or close, and a heavy blackout curtain that pulls all the way across. On the newest Virginia-class boats, the ones modified for gender-integrated crews, that curtain has been replaced by a sliding door for a little more privacy. Under your mattress is the coffin locker, a shallow storage box you get to by lifting the mattress on a hinged pan. That box holds everything you own for the patrol. The Royal Navy do this a little differently. On the Astute-class attack boats built at Barrow and Furness, the triple bunks are about 1 meter wide and 2 meters long, with roughly 80 centimeters of headroom, which, importantly, is enough to sit up in bed. And on the Astute class, and on the Vanguard class Trident boats before them, every single member of the ship's company gets his or her own bunk. No sharing. On United States Virginia-class attack boats, roughly 135 sailors are squeezed into a hull with around 94 racks, which means the junior enlisted still hot rack sharing one bunk between 2 or 3 sailors on opposing watches. Ask any old chief and he will tell you plainly, hot racking sounds much worse from the outside than it feels once you are in the rhythm of it. That is the practice where the mattress is quite literally warm when the next person climbs in. Then there is how the boat manages light. Because there is no sun, the boat has to manufacture its own version of night. It does that through lighting states. The default when the crew is going about routine business is white. But red light appears in specific places, and this is where the sleeping magic actually happens. Rig for red means switching the control room to dim red lighting, so that when the officer of the deck raises the periscope at night, his eyes are already adapted to darkness. It takes the human eye about 30 minutes to fully adjust to low light, and red preserves that adaptation while letting the crew read charts and instruments. In the berthing spaces, the passageway past the racks, the lighting is dim red almost all the time. At any moment, roughly a third of the crew is asleep in those bunks, and dim red is the closest thing a windowless boat can offer to nighttime. In sensitive patrol areas, spaces can rig for black entirely, all lights off. Zoom in on a single rack, curtain drawn, and the space inside is properly dark. Not eye mask dark, actually dark. Most experienced submariners will tell you the top rack is worth fighting for, because the piping runs above, give you a little more headroom, and nobody is climbing past you at all hours. And then there is the watch bill, and why it changed. For most of the nuclear submarine era, United States boats ran what was called an 18-hour day. 6 hours on watch, 6 for maintenance and personal time, 6 of protected sleep, 3 of those rotations per calendar day, which meant mathematically that every watch section slid backwards 6 hours a day. Every day was a small dose of jet lag. The Naval Submarine Medical Research Laboratory, based in Groton, spent years measuring what that actually did to submariners. They took saliva samples for melatonin, they put activity monitors on sailors, they ran the data, and the answer was clear. The human circadian clock, which runs on roughly 24 hours, cannot entrain to an 18-hour day, ever. Around 2015, that started to change. Commander Tony Grayson of the Providence trialed a new watch bill on deployment. 3 sections, but 24 hours per rotation. 8 on watch, 8 for other duties, 8 for sleep. Crews called it straight eights. The United States Submarine Force authorized any skipper to make the switch. Sailors go to bed at the same time every day. Protected sleep periods are baked in, and drills are scheduled around them. Most veteran chiefs who lived through both systems will tell you the shift was one of the biggest quality of life changes the service has made in a generation. The Royal Navy runs a 2-watch system on the Astute class, which is different arithmetic but built around the same idea. Give the crew a rhythm they can actually live in. And here is a historical comparison worth pausing on. On a Balao-class boat like the Pampanito in the Second World War, 70 crewmen shared 60 bunks, worked 12-hour shifts in 100-degree heat, and went weeks without a breath of fresh outside air. The idea of a protected sleep period would have been science fiction. The small things that turn a metal box into a place a person can actually rest. The engineered systems get you halfway. The rest is human. And honestly, this is my favorite part of the whole story. Start with the curtain. That heavy piece of dark fabric pulled across the front of your rack is not just for light and sound. It is a signal. A drawn curtain in berthing means the sailor inside is asleep, off watch, and off limits. You do not tap. You do not stage whisper his name. You come back later. Every crew enforces this without ever writing it down. Then there are the photos. Almost every submariner tapes a small number of photos to the underside of the rack above him, 3 or 4 inches from his face. A spouse, a child, a dog, a truck. The last thing he sees before he pulls the curtain, the first thing he sees when he wakes up. On a boat where you cannot send a message home and cannot look out a window, those photos are load-bearing. Then there is the phone. It has no signal down there, obviously. There is no cell service 300 feet under the ocean. But before deployment, sailors load them up. Playlists, podcasts, downloaded shows, hundreds of family photos and videos, a pair of noise-canceling earbuds, and a phone that only works as a media player is one of the most valuable things you can bring on patrol. The coffin locker is organized the same way every patrol. Clean skivvies to the left, socks to the right, spare workout gear at the bottom, the little zip pouch with toothbrush and razor at the top. It is not military neatness for its own sake. You have exactly this much space and no more, and you will be reaching into it in the dark, half asleep, for 90 days. Any veteran chief will tell you, the day someone else's mess spills into your coffin locker is a genuinely bad day. There is the eye mask and the earplugs, and most sailors bring their own rather than trust to what is issued. There is the mid-rats coffee, the meal served for the midnight watch changeover, which becomes an anchor in a day without sunrise. There is the paperback book, chosen months in advance, that only comes out under the reading lamp. And then there is the quiet code in berthing. Nobody speaks above a whisper. Locker doors are opened with one hand steadying them. Bootlaces done up sitting on the deck, not standing. On a boat where a third of the crew is always asleep, every sailor understands that everyone else's rest is his responsibility too. Honestly, the way a crew treats berthing tells you almost everything you need to know about the state of a boat. Now look, this would not be a Life at Sea video if we were not completely straight with you about both sides. So let's be honest, the systems make sleep possible. They do not make it easy. That 2021 Naval Submarine Medical Research Laboratory study I mentioned earlier is worth coming back to. 77.8% of the crew reported poor sleep quality, More than half reported high daytime sleepiness. Over a quarter reported insomnia symptoms severe enough that in any civilian setting a doctor would call for clinical intervention. And these are the numbers after the reform. Sleep debt on patrol is real, and it accumulates. Then there is the isolation. On a ballistic missile submarine, and to a lesser extent, on an attack boat on a sensitive patrol, communication with home is almost entirely one way. The familygram, on United States boats, is a message of about 40 to 50 words that a family member sends through the submarine squadron's family readiness group. A patrol might carry 8 to 10 of them per sailor. On Royal Navy Trident boats, the format is 60 words twice a week or 120 words once a week. Messages are screened. They cannot contain bad news. They cannot be replied to. If something serious happens at home, a death, a serious illness, a family emergency, that news is held by the commanding officer at his discretion, sometimes until the last day of patrol. That is an institutional kindness. It is also an institutional weight. Families feel this on the beach. Royal Navy research into submariner families has documented that spouses carry the entire load of home for the duration, from car breakdowns to school problems, with no way to consult. Children can experience real emotional and behavioral difficulties, and the sailor, when he comes home, is stepping back into a household that has been running without him for months and, in some cases, has had to make peace with his absence. Then there is the physical cost. No sunlight for that long has documented effects on mood and on vitamin D. The recirculated atmosphere, even when perfectly managed, is not open air. Long-term submarine service correlates with respiratory and cardiovascular risk in ways researchers are still working to understand. None of this is a reason not to go under. Every submariner will tell you the work is worth it. But this would not be a fair video if we did not name the cost. Where all of this is heading. The good news is that every Allied submarine force is moving in the same direction. The United States Submarine Force has authorized the 24-hour watch bill across its boats. The Royal Navy's Astute class ended hot bunking entirely. The Naval Submarine Medical Research Laboratory has been experimenting with circadian lighting, blue-enriched light during watch to promote alertness, warmer light off watch to encourage sleep, turning the boat itself into a sort of circadian pacemaker for the crew. Early trial results are promising. Under the AUKUS partnership announced in 2021, the Royal Navy, the United States Navy, and the Royal Australian Navy are jointly developing a new class of nuclear attack submarine. The class that will eventually replace the Astute class in British service and, along with the delivery of Virginia-class boats, take Australia into the nuclear submarine era. That design work is being done with the accommodation lessons of the last 30 years already baked in. The submariners who serve on those boats in the 2040s will inherit a sleep environment that would look like science fiction to a chief on the old Los Angeles-class boats. The lineage matters. From sailors sleeping between torpedoes on a Balao-class boat in the Second World War, to Cold War crews grinding through the 18-hour day, to today's crews on straight eights, to whatever the new AUKUS-class crews will look back on us as. Every step has been someone in the medical corps or on a boat working out how to make a slightly more human place under the ocean. So, pulling all of this together, the reason submariners can sleep 300 feet under is not that they are tougher than the rest of us. It is design. Layer on layer of design. The anechoic tiles on the outside of the hull that make the boat one of the quietest, man-made objects in the ocean. The atmosphere systems that keep the air chemically survivable. The lighting states that manufacture a night in a place that does not have one. The watch bill that gives the human body a 24-hour clock to grip onto. The rack, the coffin locker, the curtain, the reading lamp, and then the human layer on top of all that, the photos taped inside the bunk, the playlist downloaded before departure, the unwritten quiet code that says everyone else's sleep is your responsibility too. It is not comfortable, but it works. And that, when you actually think about what a submarine is genuinely remarkable. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to Life at Sea for a lot more content just like it. And if you have ever served under the water, or you have got someone in your family who has, drop it in the comments. I would genuinely love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.